Without further ado, let's bring on our guest, and his name is Parker Newman. And greetings, Parker. How are you?
Hey, very good. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Lorenzo.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
Good to
So,
have you, man. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining
thank
us.
you. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you
yeah,
so much.
yeah. Tell us a little bit about City of Demons that you have. You have your own imprint, or you
Uh,
have another publisher, or how does
yeah,
that
so
go?
we're currently so we're our publisher is Blood Moon Comics. Our
Okay.
release date is May 21st, and Blood Moon, if you guys know, has done a lot of really cool horror comics. And this one, despite not being a horror, does I think fit very well in their broader catalog. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, very excited to join Blood Moon. Was awesome. It's been so far been a really great experience to work with them, get their feedback and whatnot. Yeah, so I'm very excited for what's about to come. And
Awesome.
Very.
yeah, and so yeah, City of Demons. The short of it is that there is a serial killer in 1920s LA targeting the top mafia officials from both warring families in LA. One of the families, the Boyles, controls a lot of the local businesses and the police force, and the Sullivans control a lot of the up and coming Hollywood studios. And so this is silent film Hollywood. It directly feeds into a lot of the history through that. And so one of the families hires two private detectives to solve this murder. And over the course of what will be 12 issues, we're going to find out all the dark secrets of 1920s Hollywood at that time. And it's really a story that I think speaks more about the culture of modern Hollywood now, of especially concerning a lot of things that have come out in the news and whatnot. So the one things that I want to address is that a lot of that sort of culture that's led to a lot of that behavior has really existed there for decades and decades and decades, even since the silent era, where in 1920s is a really cool era because that's where Hollywood was becoming Hollywood.
Hmm.
That's where it was becoming the epicenter of American pop culture, and I thought that was a really interesting place to take it. Also, because I'm an independent creator, I'll be honest, it was also you could do black and white art without it feeling cheap. So having black and white art, and the artist actually did a really cool thing to where it's not just black and white, but it's more of a grayscale. So there's a really nice, and you look through the art, there's a really nice texture to each panel. And it was so awesome. And working with our artist, Kingsley, was amazing. And there's, yeah, I'm super happy with how the art came out. So
Yeah, it
there's
looks
a, there's
great.
a, yeah, there's a black, so it was black, able to do black and white art in the way that didn't feel cheap, that felt like it fit 1920s. And it felt moody, right in line with the noir sort of storyline. And actually, what we're looking through right now is an introduction to one of our four main characters, Lucas Short, and this is introduction to his background as a World War One veteran, and so which feeds into a lot of his actions later in the story.
Okay.
How much
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for period pieces. I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy going back and looking at the story and then comparing it to real history and looking for
Right.
parallels. So how much research did you do into the real history and how much are you
Yeah.
weaving that into your story?
A lot. So, for instance, and we have, of course, with every story, twisted a little bit. So, Lucas Short actually, right after this, he's introduced as actually a detective in the LAPD. And what's really cool and why that was even how Lucas Short came to be is that um, I'm blanking on the name, but there was a police officer in the LAPD in the 19, I think it was right during World War One era, but essentially that's a really cool piece of LAPD that a lot of people don't know, is that they were actually one of the earliest big cities to allow black police officers into the force. And
Oh
I thought that
wow.
was a really interesting little piece to then kind of take my own route through and explore one of our characters. And a lot of it has also been through a lot of the if you really look at the divide, like where the whole Warren mob families come across. So the creation of LA itself did leave a lot of underground families, underground organizations to rise up, especially when it would start expanding. You have I mean, there's a whole history in terms of like just really weird under the table dealings in terms of getting the water across because it's really around a desert, a large
Mhm.
part of it.
Yeah.
So, and also how that was really beating at points against a lot of the studio system that was trying to, rake in its own sort of cash. So it was a whole sorts of conflicts going on. There's also speaking larger to the culture of Hollywood in that time period. There's all these sort of like weird little scandals. Well, not little, but like um was it? Oh yeah, William Randolph Hearst
Oh yeah.
had a money flow in one of the studio systems, and then it was on a ferry that one of the actor or no movie producer he was in like didn't like just died. And it's like one of the unsolved quote unquote unsolved mysteries of that time period. And then there's an actor named Fatso where just a girl he was in relations with died. And then so there's all sorts of really cool stories around that time period
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to set a detective story around it. I just thought it was an opportunity that was really excited me. So every time I write it, I just finished. We're almost my side almost finished writing all 12 issues, and so we're coming up on completion of issue 7 right now, which is actually ahead of schedule. So really happy for that. But yeah, so every time I go down to write, it's always looking at this little slices of history and what can I then add on top of it.
Mhm.
The one thing that I really haven't looked into much, or I won't say I haven't looked into, but like I don't really care to apply, is the vernacular. So you have a lot of the vernacular of the 1920s you see now and then. And my own opinion is that when I want the reader to read it, I want to read it as a continuous. So they use modern vernacular. I'm not saying they curse every 2 sentences because I if you make it so modern, you can also take it away. But
Right.
adding a nice sort of vocabulary to where it was easily accessible, where you can just read it. Because I read a lot of comics, and some good, but one comic I read recently was like a rendition of a superhero in the 40s, and they started using 40s vernacular. And instead of really grounding the story, in my opinion, in that time period, it really distracted me because it felt like a writer trying to imitate something rather than really just living in the moment and really allowing the characters to just breathe naturally. And that was something I did not want to replicate. And so, yeah,
Yeah. 'Cause you realize that the language changes it literally changes.
right.
So a lot modern readers might not even recognize some of the words that you're being authentic with, and you're right, you
Yeah,
might lose some of the readers because, "What the hell are you talking about?" "What's this thing mean?" 'Cause, I'm in my 60s, and I've seen the language change, like, "What
right.
does the word mean? What are you talking
And
what's the simp? I don't understand what that
No
means.
cap.
yeah,
Skibbity Riz.
What is that?"
uh, well, it's also things like with an independent comic, there are so many because you're independent, or at least in my case, small press technically. There's so many hurdles for a reader to even get to your book. The last thing you want to do is like them to open it up. It'd be like, oh, this like already gives me a headache. Like just put it down just based on the vocabulary,
Yeah.
or like the dialogue. So like to be honest with you, that was the feeling I got when I in high school first read Huckleberry Finn. It's
Oh,
all the
wow.
whole book is written that like vernacular,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue if it's great or not because it's important. But like, holy cow, it gave me a migraine.
It could be a
Like I would
hard
read,
read.
yeah, and so the less you can do that in a small press, where again, there's already so many hurdles for someone to even get to your book, I would say the better.
Good point. Have you ever heard of the book, Hollywood Babylon by, Kate
Yes,
Singer?
yes,
Yeah, so there's
yeah,
a lot of alleged rumor in there too, but it's such an interesting book. Like you say, Hollywood's always been this way. Just as there were no
yeah,
cell
That'd be
phones
weird.
yeah, and people just they didn't talk about it. It's hush hush. The police shut stuff up, and we just didn't talk about those things they were doing, but behind the walls in the studios.
right. And so a lot of this, and to be honest with you, the comic, if you read it, does not make it very apparent that that's the actual sort of crux behind the mystery
Mhm.
until it feeds you pieces, even since issue 1. It feeds you pieces, and then those pieces build up and up and up into something much bigger. And so,
Yes.
to be honest with you, for early reviewers, I've been sharing the first 6 issues, so that's half of the story. And a part of me feels like I should have even shared issue 7, because issue 7 is where you see like the comic say, okay, no, we're fully going to dive headfirst into this, and it gets dark, even darker than a lot of what the early reviewers have read, and I think it's really, really fascinating material, and yeah, it's again just a fascinating part. But that you're right, a lot of people, like I think mainstream wise, a lot of people's eyes were open probably when the Harvey Weinstein stuff came
Harvey
out,
Weinstein, yeah.
and even before that, if you want to go back to like Roman Polanski, that whole scandal where he had to literally flee the country.
Yeah.
And then, the Roman Polanski thing just grosses me out because then he
Oh,
won, like, I think, Best
Lolita.
Director.
Was it for Lolita? Which I think it might have.
Polanski, I know he won an Oscar decades later for the movie called The Pianist, which was like
Oh,
about
okay. Okay.
and then he got like a standing ovation at the Oscars. Like, give me a break.
Mm,
Yeah, and
mm.
then yeah, it's just but all that stuff has been known to happen for decades and decades and decades since the
Mhm.
earliest days, even some of the early days of like drug use before that was even very like mainstream in America. It was happening in Hollywood.
Sure.
So a lot of that stuff is like for me to like put a highlight on it to where it's a story that takes place in 1920s, but it really, I feel, through a modern lens, speaks more about that sort of culture and sort of that underlying evil that we've been hearing in the news a lot more recently now. And that's been really interesting to do. And it's also been very fascinating to explore because, to be honest, the first thing that made me even write this were the characters and to explore their own personal journeys through like their interactions with that kind of evil. I just thought it was something that I think people would really love to read, and I can't
Yeah.
wait to share it with everyone.
Okay.
Now, did you immediately know where you wanted to go, or are you still building the direction that you
So,
want to go in?
good question. I know how it ends, so I know the whole mystery, what like who did it, and as you read along the comic, the question becomes more why. So through the private detectives, through their own investigation, their big question as they follow, trying to find out who the killer is, they first learn the motive, at least a possible motive, before they find out the actual identity. And so that whole process, like I knew that's how I wanted to do it. I knew the ending and all that. In my pitch to Blood Moon, it was a long, like months process for it to get approved. But in my pitch, I had a big, very structured outline. This happens in issue 1. This happened, and by issue 10 to 12, this arc happens. Um, my publisher's been reading the comics I've been turning in, and he knows that's not the case. So, not going to lie, by issue 3, I took that outline and pretty much threw it away because while it is, and I've been thankful that everyone who's reviewed it has said that it all feels like it connects well. All the little pieces feel like they interconnect very well. So I'm happy because creatively, what I try to allow happen is, yeah, I know where I want to take it, and yeah, I know what I want each character to happen. But the journey to that, I allow for my own a lot of spontaneity to occur because I think that's when you really get really awesome moments. Like there's a whole like for issue 8, the whole opening is something I was like, what would be really cool? What if, instead of the characters mean this way, what if they meant this way? And what if instead of this, they did this? And it all has to make sense, obviously. But it was something for me. It's like, let's make this a little bit like, let's add little moments in here that we learn a little bit more about this character. Maybe it doesn't directly connect to the plot, but it directly connects to the character and directly connects to the reader understanding that character a little bit more, and in a way that they probably wouldn't have otherwise. And to be honest with you, issue 1 introduces Lucas to a mystery. In issue 1, you're still not sure what that mystery is because my time and my goal in issue 1 was I need the reader to connect to Lucas before anything else. they need him, like, to connect to him. And so for me, it was character before everything, even character before plot. And I don't think I've sacrificed plot in order to really build those characters up, but I think it's been a really awesome experience in terms of focusing on characters, allowing the reader just like breathe with them. Because issue 4 is you're introduced to big plot elements, but issue 4, to be honest, is a character piece where it focuses on the backstory of one character. And why that may not connect to the actual plot of the mystery, it connects a lot to that character's motivations throughout the rest of the story and allows the reader to understand where mentally and psychologically that character is at.
Yeah. And you mentioned the art too. The art looks great because
Yeah, the art's amazing.
some people think that they're turned off by black and white art. They shouldn't be, because you can do great black and white art, and this looks very great. I mean, it gives
Yeah.
you a feeling of the 1920s, and it's
Yeah,
not you know, it's not not overly computerized, so you don't get distracted by that. You know, this looks just perfectly. The tones and the shades look just great.
yeah, there was a part in I don't know anyone else who does this, but in my scripts, I always put pictures. Like for instance, if like I say, okay, Lawrence or Lucas, answer the phone. I include a picture of a phone from that time period.
Hmm.
Or they like do anything like the whole car scene. We actually initially through the sketches, I saw this cars was a little bit off. I was like, oh, this is like a 1950, we need 1920s. Anything I could think of, like that, I'm like, oh, the character interacts with this object or interacts with this. I just fit like my scripts are filled with references, reference photos to objects from that time period. If I'm like, hey, I want this woman to wear this kind of dress, like I'll send a picture of that for a reference. I even have reference photos because for some of these panels, I want a very specific frame. And so I'm like, hey, here's an old like 1990, like a noir film. Here's a reference for that. And here's the kind of lighting effect. And a Kingsley, more than anything, what I think he's great at, or two things that he's great at, is lighting effects in this. Like you see the headlights and a lot of the more noir, moody sort of panels. You see a lot of that light work, and it's fantastic. And one of the reason Kingsley, I saw his work, and he was with some of his friends was doing like their own superhero comics. And one of the reasons I contacted him and decided to work with him is because, yeah, it was superhero, and most people are like, what does that have to do with like noir? His characters were so expressive, and everything was so dynamic, even the conversation scenes. And in noir detectives, it's a lot of interrogations, a lot of talking. And I was like, if he can make it feel dynamic as that, then perfect. And his, again, black and white work, it was before I even decided to work with him. I was like, hey, can you just show me what this could look like? And he did it in like a day. And I was like, this is great. So yeah, like, let's team up. And then it was he's so good. The characters are so expressive, and to be honest with you, his art only gets better. So issue like 6, which we fully completed, or actually fully just completed issue 7, it looks even better. And Kingsley's so good that he even asked me a week ago. He said, "Can I actually go back to issue 1 to change a few things?" And I was like, "Well, sadly, we can't right now." But I was like, "It's still great." But yeah, but his art only gets better, and I think part of that comes from the rapport of him and I, just knowing how each other sort of what we look for. Because I'm definitely seeing him like for every script, like just reference photos of like other comics, like, hey, the page, I really like this page layout. Let's see if we can do it this, but like in this other way. Yeah, but like, yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you really did a great job writing that. You said you want people to know that character, Mr. Short, the war veteran, and the first issue totally did the job for me. I mean, I was thinking it was just going to be a story about him, and then the second issue we see how other characters the other detectives introduced, but by that time I totally bonded with Short. You
Yeah.
know? And you see his trials that he's gone through in the war. He's got PTSD and all this stuff, of course. And man, it's really unfolding really, really well. Is there a special inspiration that you have for this? Are you a fan of of noir movies or of old film or something?
You don't really like noir movies. That's the that's the weird thing. I think so. I really like good detective stories.
Me
I'm
too.
not a huge fan of film noir, to be honest with you, which is
It's
kind of
okay.
funny. Um, uh, to be honest with you, this comic, I really love Robert Kirkland like anyone else. Um, and so in this one, I always hated a lot of detective comics that they have like this. I know it's a trope, and so like whatever. It's like
Mhm.
the running monologue, the internal monologue that
Yeah,
just goes on and on.
Yeah.
yeah,
I hate it. So for me, and I'm also in my daytime, I'm a videographer. I do like commercial shoots and whatnot, and I really like letting visuals speak for themselves. So I really try to pull back a lot of the lettering. And so, for instance, on some like if a guy throws a punch, I don't put a sound effect.
Mm.
Uh, because I think the image is so powerful enough, it speaks for itself.
Oh, Stan Lee's rolling in his grave. Everything's got
Yeah, I know.
it's alive.
Everything, yeah. So that's my own little thing. I
Yeah.
do obviously use sound effects for like you saw the war scene because I want
Mhm.
a chaotic, overbearing feeling. But um, there's moments where I just want to no intro monologues. Like we're just going to have all the visuals speak for themselves. But then I cheat. So like in issue 2, I kind of cheated because Lawrence is when he talks about the crime scene is at.
Mhm.
I was like, well, how are they going to understand what like he's looking at? Because he's not going to talk to himself. Like, oh, that's kind of weird. If he's like it's like, oh, I see this. This means this and this. So I was like, these sounds like notes, like a notepad. So
Mhm.
that's how kind of I cheated. And then on issue 4, which to be honest is my personally so far my favorite issue, which is nothing but character work. I cheat again, um, but I think cheat again in a way that psychologically tells you a lot about the character. Which if you read it, I think hopefully you would agree. um,
I've
but
only
yeah,
gotten
it's
issue I've finished issue 2 so far. I'm still working my way down
okay.
to the number 6.
Yeah, but yeah. So I'm not a really big fan of film noir, but a big inspiration for me as a comic book fan was the early work of Frank Miller. Like to be honest with you, Dark Knight Returns. I read that when I was way too young. Thank you, Dad. I read it when I was like 11. And though I was not old enough to completely understand the nuances of it, you're still old enough to realize this is awesome. And I did not know a comic book could do this. And like Frank Miller, those early Frank Miller works, like I've been rereading his Daredevil like comic. I have it right behind me. His like, Born Again, all that stuff is so awesome. And that really speaks to me. And then another writer that I'm constantly amazed by, and I actually just read it 2 weeks ago, was uh, everyone like Alan Moore.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so like so I always heard as a fan like, oh, you need to read Swamp Thing, and I was like, I'm not a big monster guy, but fine. And I read his one of his first issues, Anatomy Lesson, and I kind of it kind of made me depressed because it's like I don't know how I could ever write something a tenth of that good because
Wow.
I read it and I still think so like it's probably the single best issue I've ever read in my life
Damn.
because it's like it's an issue and the way it tells the story is only a way a comic book could like you could not replicate in a movie, a TV show, or a novel. And to tell that story in that way had to be a comic book. And I was like, dang, he's good. Creatively, again, for this specifically, I'd be lying if I didn't say True Detective was a big inspiration.
All
The
season?
first season,
Okay.
first and third.
First and
The
third.
second one's kind of a mess.
Was the third
it
was
is
good
a
though?
mess, but it's about what you're talking about. Though
Yes.
I immediately thought True Detective season 2.
Well, True Detective season 2, so it has really good moments. I think it's a little bit too much all over the place in terms
You,
of here, but this one is hopefully once you read 6 issues, hopefully you'll agree is a maybe more focused. But season 2, I mean, I still enjoy season 2. I watched season 4. I didn't really like it. Uh,
So I didn't understand
Yeah.
season 2 until I read an explanation of it. I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I get it." But watching it, a lot of it was over my head because it was all over the
Yeah.
place, as you said.
It was one of the shows where it was I love these big sprawling stories like that. But it was the one instance where, and the thing with season two that frustrates me as a true detective fan was that it was good, but you felt like it was like this close or like maybe two or three steps from being like really really good,
Yeah.
and you kept feeling that like, oh, it's so close but not quite there. But yeah, anyway, but when I was pitching a Blood Moon, I pitched the story as like True Detective meets Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones to me, there's a
Wow.
lot of political back and forth. And from issue 2 on, you'll see between the warring crime families, they use the introduction of the serial killer to their own political advantage. So, for
Mm,
instance, the Boyles, they don't want the killer to be found out. And you'll learn about why for their own political power move. The Sullivans are using it to distract their enemies and to distract. So that new leader of the family, Marcus Sullivan, is using it to distract his own enemies within the family from his own actions, going from his own secretive actions. So it's a that sort of like Game of Thrones political intrigue element. And so far, I think it's worked because I've been able to intertwine the stories fairly closely. But yeah, that was my pitch, and I mean, thank goodness they liked it because
yeah.
I could definitely see how that pitch could go to someone. They're like, "So is it like a medieval like detective story?" It's like, no, it's like 1920s. But yeah, so far I'm very pleased with how everything's been going.
Yeah, it's a great
You got
job.
you have
I
my
mean,
interest.
yeah.
I'm definitely interested. Given that I am interested, is this on FOC or how can people make sure that they can grab this book at their LCS?
Yeah, so that's a situation to be, and I'm going to be honest, that's a situation where I've been talking to the publisher right now about that, but it is distributed through Diamond. You can go on Blood Moon's website. Right now, pre-orders are actually not up. So that's again, I'll have to get back to you. And just being completely honest, that's a situation I'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, you got
Um,
Diamond's got some things going on, so
yeah, they do have things going on,
Mm.
and that's been I've been following that very closely. So yeah,
And Blood Moon is there Diamond is Blood Moon's distributor, I imagine, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
correct,
okay.
So
correct, yeah, and
Mm.
so I've been following that closely. Back and forth with publisher. Yeah, I don't have a. I mean, I'm not the publisher, so I don't have a
yeah, so
specific
it's
answer
still
for
up in
that.
the air. Okay,
Yeah,
because I definitely want to make sure that I can get this book. I'm interested, definitely.
yeah, and so it's yeah, I think it's one of those situations with this story where I feel really confident in it. I've made sure to pass it along to a lot of people I know who love comics who are not my friends. Just pass along, like, and social media has been great for that. And so it's one of those situations where I truly believe if people give it a chance, they will really like it and they will dig it and they will want the issue after issue and they will be really into the story. Um, and so, but it's one of the, yeah, it's a really cool thing because it's like I know that Kingsley's art's great. I really hope my writing is up to par, and but it's like I'm confident that there's something really special here. Is like as long as someone could get their hands and hopefully tell the rest of their friend group or friend group and friend groups and family members and whoever they want, workers, coworkers, about this, that I think everyone will really find something they can enjoy. Because I think there's actually a lot here to enjoy.
Sure.
Actually, I just messaged you another channel, K-pop Junkie, who she does a lot of highlighting independent comics, just like Lorenzo does, and
Awesome.
I think she would really like what you're doing. I would definitely hit her up as well because I think you have the right idea in terms of getting the word out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great avenues like Lorenzo to do that, so I think you got the right idea for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been whenever you're doing like small press comics, it's essentially you're facing a lot of the same struggles as independent work. Like really, like you're mostly you're doing your own marketing. The biggest way that's taken off your shoulders is obviously distribution. But even still, you're still like your own salesman. And so that's been the biggest when you're just like, okay, got to dig my head down and just like power through. And on top of that, you still have to like, be your own marketer, and you have to do the writing, make sure on top of that, have to give revision notes and all the art that's coming in. As well as just working on a normal job. And so, and so, yeah, it's, like one person asked me, was like, so like, what's your advice for doing this? I'm like, I get lucky that a publisher takes a chance on you because like when I was talking to Blood Moon, I knew they did horror, and I was like, okay, and like to be honest with you, the name City of Demons, um, I was playing around with a few names. City of Demons was what I landed on because it's a play on City of Angels, L.A. But I knew that Blood Moon was horror. I thought City of Demons sounded more horror esque. So I was like, maybe this fits in more with what they're looking for, because if you're looking
Yeah.
through a bunch of emails, like, oh, City of Demons. But yeah, because but yeah, be lucky enough that a publisher takes a chance on you. But also just be willing to once you take on the challenge, that getting a publisher is not even 50% of the way. It's like probably 20 or 30 because you still have to do everything else creatively and have to do like I just mentioned all the marketing. So just get ready. But I love this stuff. I love comics. Like, to be honest, I think it's probably the greatest sort of medium of storytelling because you can do things in this that you just can't do in film. You
Absolutely.
can't do in like typical prose and novel writing. Um, like I think like when I look back at Darwin Cook, one of my favorite
Mm,
comic creators ever. Like when I think about like what can only comics do, I look back at his work and it blows my mind. Um, I read back at like Ms. Swamp Thing, like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing series, any of his Tom Strong stuff. I think it's phenomenal. But like you can only elicit that kind of feeling it's just through comics in a way that a lot of people like or just most art forms can't even do. Like I think it's a much more emotionally immediate than reading a novel. I think there's something really emotional, just really emotional about having the page in hand and being able to read a serialized story in a very high paced way a comic is made to be that you don't really get from television. And yeah, I think it's wonderful. And like if I could do this for the rest of my life, I would love to, but have to get through this one project at a time. So yeah,
Well, I would say with the issues with Diamond, I
yeah,
know Antarctic Press is pulling
yeah.
back, and so if anything like that happens, you should definitely consider a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I think you got a great, interesting setup here, and I think the whole Holly weird thing is something that people are interested in right now. So I'm feeling it, man. So definitely keep going. I think you got
mhm.
something here.
Yeah.
Dave, you got the
Yeah. Thank
whole
you.
series almost done here. So even if
Yeah.
things don't work out with this publisher, I think
Yeah.
crowdfunding would probably be a good way to get,
Kickstarter, I
Yeah.
think it
yeah,
could kick some butt on Kickstarter, man. I really do.
Thank you.
Especially
Yeah.
with you being able to show so much of what you've already done. I
Yeah.
think that I think that would do really well. So even if things don't work out with Blood Moon, I think you got a lot of options,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So to be honest, that's the situation where it's been, I've honestly have not done Kickstarter because right now with them handling distribution, I can pretty well compensate everything else. Um, but yeah, you're 100% right. If distribution falls, I
mhm.
mean, I have to essentially print my own stuff or dash and find a publisher. Um, I, I will have to like. There's no way to avoid. I will have to do a Kickstarter,
Well,
and
come back
yeah,
to us if that happens. I do,
yeah,
and
Yes,
I can do that as well on FOC and Chills, and I know a number of outlets for that. So you've piqued my interest. I'm definitely down to use our platforms if that's the case. I
for
think this
sure.
sounds like
yeah,
I haven't got a chance to read it myself, but I like your setup, man. It sounds good, and the art. You know, I'm not as Lorenzo knows. I am not a huge fan of black and white art, but the thing that I see differently here is it's clean, it's not muddy, it's clear. I can see what's going on. My problem with black and white art is it's really muddy and I
yeah.
can't really see what's happening. And that's clearly not an issue in this book. So
No,
I like
yeah.
it a lot.
There's a lot of yeah. I have the same issue too. Even like something where and I think when you say black and white, like whenever I tell someone black and white, they're like, okay. But I show them it's like, no, this is like again, it's like I love the grayscale. There's a
This is
texture to the
grayscale
images.
so yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, because
for sure.
and to be honest, that's all like Kingsley's great at that because my original idea for the visual look was something that was only going to be harsh black, harsh white, similar to like a Sin City.
Right.
That was my original look, just because I thought that'd be cost effective, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came out with this, I was like, that's even better than what I possibly could have imagined. So yeah, keep doing that. So it's
There's something
it looks great.
more conducive to that stark white, stark black, like you can say Sin City or Charles Burns, or the heavily cross-hatched kind of art that he has. But this artist's work looks great with the grayscale. It would probably look great in color too, but with the grayscale, it doesn't have like the heavy hatching. It's more of a style that doesn't do that, and it comes off great.
It's easily readable. Yeah, that's why.
Yes, that's the thing is the art pops. I can see what's going on. It's very readable. Yeah, very cool.
I mean, I read the first 2 issues. I think last night, and I was like, wow, this is better than anything I've read all this week so far. You know,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
This is great. Okay, because I read something, I won't say from where it was a King Spot book. I'm like, wow, that made it. That got pitched and that was done. That was a thing. And I just, I was not very happy with that. But this is very good so far.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot because we got a number of rejection letters to get a publisher. And there was one publisher, I won't say the name because I don't want to get in trouble, but I was frustrated because I just got like 3 rejections before and it was all vague. Like all the reasons were so like, I was like, I read, it was the first issue we just submitted. I was like, I think this is really, am I crazy? I thought this is really good. And so I just asked one guy, I was like, please, like, if you can help me understand like what I can do better. And the reply was, I'll never forget this. Oh no, I really liked it. I actually really enjoyed your issue. The problem is that this is your first comic. And it's just too much of a risk right now. It's like, but hey, if you want to do something else, then come back. And I'm like, this stuff takes such a long time to do.
Yeah.
I was like, and for me, it was like, so you read something you liked. That's pretty good. And because this is my first time, you're like, nah, instead of like investing in like a young artist who you feel you can build a business relationship with early on. But I mean, obviously, I'm biased. So.
Whoever that was a person without a lot of vision. You know, they're going to go with a proven commodity. They think it's a sure bet. There's no such thing as a sure bet. A person with a good name can make a shitty book anytime. You know, it can happen.
I've read a lot of those. So yeah.
I
was about to say, I love typically I love Jeff Lowe, but he's written some good stuff. And then I'll give him, I mean, I know his arm was kind of twisted, but like, have you read Ultimatum?
I have
terrible.
Not.
It was terrible. It's like the ending of the original Marvel Ultimate Universe. Where their incentive was just to kill everyone. It was terrible. It was horrible.
He did
and
that.
I was like, this is Jeff Lowe. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
But I mean, I think his arm was more or less twisted there by execs. He just said you just need to kill it off.
Yeah, this is the end for this universe. Just make it happen.
But he killed it off in the most bizarre. I don't know if he was told it ended that way. Like, you know, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Editorial probably had, had come down from up high. Like, this is ending. And if he didn't do it, they hired somebody else to do it. So he just, I'll do it. Wow. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, Parker. This has been great. I got the link to your Instagram down in the information below. And
thank you.
Is there any other way you can be contacted until this book comes out?
Right now we're building up a Twitter and trying to do a Facebook. But right now Instagram is probably the best way. It's
there it is.
Yeah, but yeah, it's one of those situations where I need to build those out. It's the hardest part about marketing this now, and I'm sure you guys completely understand. You're marketing something that you physically don't have yet, right? Or you physically can't sell yet. So you're like, hey, trust me. So essentially the marketing becomes in a way, hey, trust me, this is good. So what I've done is, like, by reaching out to you guys, reaching out to other comic book people, has been, hey, here's the first 6 issues. Take a chance, read it, let me know what you think. And because again, like I said before earlier, it's one of those stories that if you give a chance, I think a lot of people really dig it. And I do see it, find a sizable enough fan base. But yeah, thank you for saying it was one of the best things you read in 2 weeks. Yeah, thank you. That was, yeah, it's been, to get the first issue even out was absolutely just brutal. So yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, so whenever, hey, when it's called City of Demons, and whenever it comes out, whether it's through a publisher or if you have a Kickstarter or other kind of a crowdfunder going, we'll have you back on, and people can
Thank
find out
you.
where to get it, because this is a really good book that should be read by indie comics readers. So
Thank you.
thank you
Yeah.
for giving me the preview, and thank you, Marcus, for letting me know about this very cool book.
Hey, thank you for hitting me up, man. I'm
Yeah.
very cool. I'm sharing you right now on Instagram, man. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right, well, there it is, City of Demons. Thanks a
Link
lot.
is in the chat,
Thank you.
guys. Plug in on that and be ready when we get some info on how we can make sure that we can get this book.
Oh yeah, you'll hear it here for sure when it happens. All right,
Sweet. Thank you guys so much.
you're welcome, man. Take care.
You
Good
too.
stuff, homie.
Don't forget to subscribe and leave a thumbs up.